Hi, welcome.
Hi, Kat.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, you?
Good. I'm well too. Thanks.
Good, good.
Could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yeah, my name's Phil, and I'm a father of four and live in the county.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Yes, so I'm a police inspector. Been in the police for 25 years now, so been in for quite a long time. Reached the rank of inspector. So my day job, if you can describe it that, because it's not a days at all, is I work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year as one of the response teams, and I manage the response teams across the county, across all the north of the county. So if you basically draw a line across the top of Derby City, all the rest of the county going north, I supervise the teams on duty on either a day shift, a late shift, or a night shift, and that rolls over every week. So I've got a 12-hour afternoon shift coming up today.
Right. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing this part of your time off to tell your story with us. Thanks. What does a typical day, if there is such a thing as a typical day in your life, what does a typical day look like for you, Phil?
Well, that's the joy of the job, and I think that's why I've loved it for 25 years, is there is no such thing as a typical day. So there's a similar structure. So we'll start the day where I'll get a briefing from my colleagues. So we'll do a handover of what's been happening the shift before. We'll have a chat through anything particular. We look after the custody suite as well and the prisoners in it. What's happening with all the investigations in the custody suite. And then we might have a really quiet period for a few hours, or within 30 seconds, the phone can start ringing. So part of my responsibility is I'll give different authorities for people who are in the custody suite. So I have to make the decision whether we're going to search somebody's house, whether we're going to keep them in custody for a bit longer. So I'll be doing those decision making. But by the same token, if another incident comes in that's of a serious nature, I will either command that from the office, or I might actually go out to it, depending on what it is. So anything involving a fatality, I'll be involved in. High risk missing people, I'll oversee all missing people, but anything, so young children or particularly elderly or people who are intent on causing themselves harm, I'll manage those incidents and make sure that they've got close oversight. So some days you can start a 12-hour shift and you look at your watch and you're 11 and a half hours in and you wonder where that's gone. It can be manic. Or on the counter, some days we have a really easy evening, and then my job will involve going out and visiting the staff at the different stations, checking on their welfare, checking that they're all right and they've got what they need. So yeah, it's a great job.
But it sounds like it's absolutely full on as well. And you mentioned that you're also a father of four. So yes. What does a typical day look like from that point of view?
Well, fortunately, my children are all getting a bit older. So I've got an adult daughter right down to a son still at primary school. So he's probably the one who needs the most intervention. The other three are fairly self-sufficient, but still there's driving lessons. There's driving lessons. The dad taxi is a full part of my day as well. Yeah, but it's good.
Yeah. Very, very busy person though.
Try to be. I like it that way.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, you sound really positive about it. That's great. What impact does your faith have on your everyday life, Phil?
My faith, it's massive, really, particularly in the work environment, in the family environment as well. But at work, I suppose there's three things really for me. Is one, in the line of work, we deal with the worst that humanity's got to offer, day in, day out. We're dealing with people who are just horrible to each other. We see the aftermath of what humanity is capable of doing to each other, which isn't how God intended it. But we have that hope, or I have that hope, that one day we'll be in heaven and there will be no crying, there will be no suffering, there will be no pain, and actually some of that is possible now because God's kingdom is here now, and actually when we seek him, then that does ease it, which I suppose brings me on to my second point, which is the power of prayer, and that being able to pray into the situations that I'm dealing with at work, praying for if we've got large scale disorder, the officers going into that are safe, and to be able to pray for God's protection on them as they're going in, and onto myself as well, praying into that, knowing that when a young child has gone missing, that God knows where that child is, and just praying that the Lord reveal that child to us. And yeah, I've had many really powerful answers to prayer for God into situations. But also, I think finally, just on or at a personal level as well, that yes, it is full on, but God will never give me too much. And I'm always reminded of the verse in Matthew 11:28, come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So I've still got the work to do, but knowing that I can just give the rest of it, all that baggage that might come with that work, just being able to give that to Jesus and take rest in him when I'm not, when it isn't full on, or even when it is full on, just knowing that Jesus carries all that for me. It's not sure I'd have survived the last 25 years without it. Yeah.
Wow. That's really powerful. How does your church help support you in your everyday faith?
So church is great because great bunch of Christian people. So actually, when it is getting hard, actually having people who I've been able to share with, so not necessarily the detail of particularly nasty situations, or not any share anything personal that I wouldn't supposed to share, but actually I've dealt with a really horrible job today, and knowing that you've got friends as well as family, but friends who you can share those things with and who are there for you and will pray for you. And also just a bit more being able to share. I think it's really important that the church understands what's actually happening in the world. We live in a beautiful part of the world in Derbyshire, most of it. And actually we're really lucky, but people don't realise what is actually happening underneath. So I remember a few years ago now, I dealt with about 3 different human trafficking incidents, completely different sorts of human trafficking incidents within Derbyshire, all within and around the Peak District. So not areas you'd have expected. And was able to share with the church, not the details of those incidents, but able to share with the whole church, actually, this is happening and the nature of the incidents. And that's clearly God used a spark in a few people who realised that actually as Christians we're called to respond to that sort of thing. And we now, as a church, are active supporters of a project in Sheffield called Ashiana, which is a refuge for women, some of whom who have been through trafficking. So again, the church is a real practical response to situations in the world. So and knowing that, I think that's really important as a church.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much for sharing your everyday story.
Pleasure. Thank you, Kat.